Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Let Live album, The Blackest, Beautiful. Let Live, California rock band who for a few albums now have been bringing together elements of punk music, metal music, post-hardcore. On top of that, maybe some modern pop-punk flavors as well, which did play a pretty notable role on their previous LP through some of the vocal harmonies, the really hooky choruses, but still with a lot of very just, aggressive riffage, just chop the fuck up kind of riffs. There was an undeniable ferocity to this LP. Let Live is a really energetic band that I think asks a lot of energy from its listeners, and there are a few things in their sound that display that more than the vocals, which for the most part are screamed and are really high volume, relentless, impassioned. Put those together with the really fast and tight playing with the guitars and the drums, and somebody listening to this is bound to get hyped up. Now personally, I do find Let Live's sound and just the way that they deliver their songs to be a little too clean for me, a little too clean in comparison with some of my favorite post-hardcore records out there. However, I wouldn't really say that they're up there with some of the more melodramatic, poppy and kind of spick and span bands in the genre. I don't know, Asking Alexandria. And even though that's not the case, I gotta say, I feel like Let Live is moving a little bit further in that direction with The Blackest, Beautiful. Oddly enough, though, I don't really feel like the band has gotten any less aggressive on this LP. Their frontman, Jason Butler, feels just as intense as he did on the band's last full length. He's spazzing out on nearly every track here. His shouts and his screams feel really throaty, and when he goes for more of a toned-down, spoken word kind of vibe, he feels really emotive, kind of eccentric, over the top. I think he has a ton of personality as a frontman, even if sometimes his lyrics don't really move me or anything like that, even if I may agree with them to a slight degree. The American government is sucking the dicks of corporations! Despite statements like that, I can't help but feel like the sound that Let Live presents at times feels a tad bit corporate. For one, the really clean, robotic, and pristine vocal harmonies that are used on almost every track on this LP feel more than ever as if they're being used just for accessibility purposes, because they certainly don't sound that great. For anybody that wants to just hear a raw, natural, real human voice, it feels really fake and obnoxious. It's like the kind of studio trickery that a really bad glam metal band would use, or even a new metal band. There are spots where Butler's vocalizations make me imagine him as like a tiny David Draymond. I'm just torn on his performances because, for the most part, I feel like he is the most interesting thing this album has to offer because of his energy and because of his passion, aside from Anthony Rivera on drums, who actually has a fantastic drum break on the track The Fear Fever. But consistently throughout the album, his grooves, his tightness, his speed, and his detail are all really impressive. Even though Butler seems like an incredibly capable singer, obviously that's the case from Let Live's previous LP, every time he tries to do something that seems to stick out on here, it just makes me cringe a little bit. Like the start of the track White America, I told him like this! Or the really sort of overacted and whimpering vocals on the closer, especially as he's kind of talking about taking his own life and kind of laughing to himself toward the very back end of the track, as if this is like some kind of display of psychosis, or maybe he's being maniacal. I'm not sure. I just feel ambivalent toward most of the emotions that Let Live just throws up in the lyrics, to be completely honest, and I don't think the band is necessarily over emotive. I get that post-hardcore is music that has a lot of links to emo music and other very expressive forms of punk. My issue is that I just really can't say there's much of anything about Let Live's approach that feels fresh. For sure, their intensity makes it adequate. The performances on this record are really tight. The production and post-production, I feel, have essentially given us a record that is really heavy and technically flawless. The band plays well, and in some of their more sporadic moments, they remind me of groups like Blood Brothers or The Refused. And as much as I like the spots on this album that remind me of those groups, the more that I think about it and the more that I listen to this, the more that this album feels like just an unapologetically poppy bastardization of the sounds that influence it. And I don't really have anything against perfection or accessibility. For sure, everything on the new Queens of the Stone Age record shows up on time, so to speak. But that album, even though it's catchy, it's somewhat subversive in its really moody emotions. On the Blackest Beautiful, Let Live definitely comes off as fast and abrasive, but it's almost kind of misleading because once you dig past that, I feel like I'm listening to these kind of basic but sped up rock ballads, which lyrically a lot of the time I feel like are just trying to plug into these really vague appeals to emotional emptiness or some kind of discontent with the world at large. Truth be told, even though there wasn't much on this record that offended me or that I really disliked aside from just the really cold sounding background vocals, a lot of it was just kind of dull for me. Again, I like the sound, I think the production is top notch, but the songwriting just really didn't do much of anything for me. I'm feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this album. If you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. This review is my opinion. If you don't like it, here's a straw. I want to give a shout out to my dog, Nori. Get better. You're literally my dog. Only the strong subscribe. All mistakes were intentional. Anthony Fantano. Let live forever.